Alright guys, it has been a hot minute since we watched some geohistory. Um and this is part 2 to a video that I watched a really long time ago. So, oopsies, I do this a lot. I intend to watch a part 2 and then I just forget about it because I am forgetful. This is the Israel-Palestine conflict. Totally not gonna get me demonetized. Summary on a map. Before we dive into the video though, make sure you go check out the links below in the description box or in my pinned comment. Would love it also if you joined the Discord. Yeah, also, Yo History. You're subscribed. I was mind blown by that. This is old news by now. But when I'm saying this. But yeah. Pretty cool if you ask me. Anyways, let's go ahead and just that's all that information's out of the way. Let's dive in. Make sure you subscribe to Geohistory if you're not already. I love them. They make great content. Very original in the way they are. Well, I guess really all of the channels I watch are original. I don't know what I'm just rambling here for words.
100 years ago began a regional conflict that would quickly become one of the world's most complex and controversial. A conflict between two very different people for the same territory. To better understand its reasons and underlying issues, let's retrace the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on a map.
Okay, cool. We're gonna get a brief summary, maybe? Or no, we're going into... Okay.
We are in 1917 during World War I. The Central Powers were opposed to the so-called Triple Entente and its allies. Both sides suffer heavy losses and desperately seek additional support. The then British Foreign Affairs Minister Arthur Balfour wrote an open letter promising a Jewish homeland in Palestine in return for support from the growing Zionist movement. Meanwhile, the British tried to weaken the Ottoman Empire by supporting the Arab Rebellion and promising them independence in liberated territories. At the end of the war, the Ottoman Empire was defeated and its land carved up by European powers. The British give more independence to Iraq and Transjordan. It is in what remains of Palestine that Britain wants to create a Jewish homeland where the Jewish community was a small minority. But immigration grows rapidly due to the tense situation in Europe, especially in Germany, with the anti-Semitic Nazi...
Oh wait, so hold on. Are they telling me here? Because the way I learned about it was that the way it was told to me is that the British didn't really try to form a Jewish state in Palestine after World War I. They kind of just occupied it and didn't really do anything. Kind of like how they didn't really give the Arabs what they had promised the Arab, right? But what this is kind of seemingly insinuating to, maybe I'm just looking too in deep to it, is that the British were trying to form a Jewish state in Palestine. It's just that migration was slow for a long time until Germany started doing the Germany stuff, the Nazi stuff.
Party came into power. In September 1939, Germany invades Poland. Britain and France respond by declaring war, sparking the beginning of World War II. In 5 years, the conflict claims more than 60 million lives, including almost 6 million Jews targeted.
I think the 60 million is I think that's the, I remember looking this up a long time ago. I think that's the lowball number, right? That's the low estimation. The conservative estimation, I think. I've seen upwards. I've seen the high number, I think, being 80. And then, so of course, 60 to 80 million. I think I probably might lean more toward the 60 million, personally. But also with the scope of the war, I could totally see 80 million people being unaccounted for, right? But
by the Holocaust. Following the war, Jewish immigration to Palestine grows, increasing tensions with Arabs. Overwhelmed by the situation, the British begin their withdrawal from the area. The UN takes over and proposes to divide the region into two states, with Jerusalem being given a special status of an international zone. The proposal was accepted by Zionists but rejected by Palestinian Arabs, followed by a civil war between the two communities. The Arab League puts together a liberation army of several thousand volunteers who fight against the Zionists. For their part, the Jews organize an army by giving military training to its population and sending agents to Europe to retrieve World War II military stocks and sign arms contracts. On May 14, 1948, Britain completes its withdrawal from Palestine while the Jews proclaim independence of the State of Israel. In response, the Arab League declares war. During the conflict, two truces would allow the Israeli army to strengthen its position and gradually take over. Finally, the armistice agreements were signed. Israel seized new territory, including Western Jerusalem.
Whoa, they grew. Okay, hold on. One thing I want to know is who the fuck thought. Here we go. Hold on. Who the fuck thought these borders were okay? Like, is there, like, do this is someone asked, this is a genuine question. Are the borders here, borders that are made here, is like, of course, Israel is the blue, Palestinians, Arab Palestinians are the white. But like, are the zones being controlled by the first zones cut out for Israel in the beginning here? Are these historically Jewish dominated regions? Or did they just like I feel like they wouldn't have just made some weird map, but like I feel like the splitting of of this region could have been a whole lot better. Like, I don't see, like, recently I think India at this time is going through the massive fucking movement of the Indians and Pakistani, where Muslims that are identified as Pakistani are moving to Pakistan, and then Indians that live in what is now Pakistan are moving into what is now India. So, you know, why didn't that happen here? Like maybe they should have just made it more simple. Like, boom, here's. And then just have the people, like, of course it sucks to force people to move, but like, also, these borders just bother me. I don't see how this border here, this border situation is a good idea. It just looks like something that will cause tension, right? Because it's very not clean border.
Israel seized new territory, including Western Jerusalem. Egypt receives the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank was annexed from Transjordan to form Jordan. This conflict causes large-scale displacement. On the one hand, more than 700,000 Arabs were expelled or fled Israeli territory to refugee camps. On the other, Jewish communities in Arab countries, sometimes with a history of over 2,000 years, are forced to take refuge in Israel or elsewhere in Europe. Eventually, many European Jews were reassured by the victory of Israel and chose to settle there.
So that wasn't the Six-Day War. This is going to be the Six-Day War.
In 1967, following tensions with its neighbors, Israel declares war on Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. In 6 days, Israel dominates the war and triples its territory by seizing the Egyptian Sinai, the Syrian Golan Heights, and the West Bank. Israeli settlers begin to move into Palestinian territories. The UN reacts and adopts Resolution 242 condemning the Israeli occupation. 6 years later, Egypt and Syria launch a surprise attack to try and recover land. Initially, the Israeli army is routed and fails to repel the attack. Under the influence of the Cold War, the Soviet Union and Arab countries support the offensive, while the United States sends emergency supplies of 22,000 tons of weaponry to Israel.
Damn.
With this boost, the Israeli army further continues to push its borders. After a ceasefire, oil-exporting Arab countries decide to punish the US and Israel's allies by increasing the price of oil by 70% and decreasing production by 5%.
Oh,
This causes the first oil crisis of 1973. Israel, under international pressure, ceded Sinai back to Egypt and a part of the Golan to Syria, but retains control over the Palestinian territories where colonization accelerates, especially in East Jerusalem. In 1980, Israel proclaims Jerusalem as its indivisible capital, but this decision was condemned by the UN Security Council. In the West Bank, tension mounts over water supply as Israel has the upper hand on resources which are unevenly distributed between Israeli settlements and Palestinian areas. In 1987,
whoa! The colonizing power is unevenly distributing resources. Remember, guys, you can be critical of Israel. Just don't be a fucking anti-Semite. Should have said that at the beginning of the video, because sometimes these videos like this, especially when talking about the Israeli government, get bad. I will be deleting anti-Semitic comments without hesitation. So, if as you're typing your comment, you're like, is this anti-Semitic? You're thinking about that question, probably. So don't type it. Just feel like I should have that disclaimer out.
the Palestinian population rebels and takes to the streets, mostly armed with stones. This was the beginning of the first Intifada, an Arab term meaning uprising. In this context arises Hamas, a Palestinian Islamist movement fighting Israel. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, set up in 1964 by the Arab League and in exile in Algiers, proclaims an independent state of Palestine on November 15, 1988. Jerusalem would be its capital, and Palestine would progressively be recognized by 136 states.
Oh, the West doesn't. Okay. Or at least not initially, maybe.
After 6 years of conflict, a fragile peace is signed with the Oslo Agreements, which provide for mutual recognition. It also lays the foundation of introducing autonomy in the Gaza Strip and the city of Jericho. In 1995, a West Bank partition plan was signed, providing for Palestine-controlled areas, mixed areas, and the rest under Israeli control.
Oh, that's an awful map.
But the two parties are unable to agree on thorny issues such as the status of Jerusalem and the return of Palestinian refugees. Negotiations fail and violence reignites. In Jerusalem, a visit by the head of the Israeli opposition to the holy site of the Temple Mount triggers the Second Intifada, marked by numerous suicide bombings. Israel begins construction of a wall in the West Bank to protect the country, but in doing so encroaches upon Palestinian territories. The wall is declared illegal by the International Court of Justice. To try to calm the situation, the Israeli government in 2005 decided to remove Jewish settlements from the Gaza Strip, but retains control over its borders.
Man, this conflict is so complex that
in the years that follow, tensions
around
focus around the Gaza Strip, mainly against Hamas, which came into power. Israel imposes a blockade in the region, while Hamas regularly fires rockets into Israeli territories. Several clashes take place, and violence by both sides builds up until 2014, when Israeli warplanes pound the area and destroy 50,000 houses, 100 schools, dozens of hospitals, and the region's only power plant. The population stuck in Gaza faced a humanitarian disaster. Today, the situation remains complicated, and lasting peace is nowhere on the horizon. On one hand, the West Bank is divided up between Palestinian towns and villages and more than 150 Israeli colonies. So striking a deal to carve out a Palestinian homeland seems more complicated than ever. Then there is the status of Jerusalem, which both sides view as their capital. In 2018, the United States announced it would move their embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the city as the capital of Israel. This decision was condemned by the UN by a large majority, while the Palestinians announced
fucking dumb decision by our then president. Oh, I remember when the news was talking about that. Oh god, a headache.
That the United States
Ugh.
no longer has a mediator role in the peace process, which at present seems indefinitely stalled.
Yeah. Ooh, that was a good video. I really like the way in which they discussed, attacked this extremely complicated situation. But I also like the way in which they delivered the information, particularly, especially when it came to towards the end. Really, when it came down to looking at the actions of both sides, I think they did a great job of striking that balance of discussing, like, hey, these are what both sides have been doing in this heated divide between, and I think that's a really good way of tackling it. I mean, that's also like a very, that's what you do as a historian, right? Um, Obviously, in these reaction videos, I do have my bias. I don't consider this professional content. when I made one historical video once, a video on King Alfred, and how he became king of Wessex. And in that, of course, in videos like that, or when writing historical papers, that is when leave out bias, right? Because you're supposed to be analyzing the facts, right? Take out your bias. Or you address, like, perhaps like the bias in your sources or whatever, right? You address inherent biases. You at least address them. In here, this was I feel like I'm rambling and explaining this very poorly. This felt like a very unbiased and, historian-like approach to discussing such a complicated conflict, right? Because here's the thing, especially a conflict like the Israel-Palestine conflict, which has broader ramifications to the wider world, there is really a bias that you form inherently. There is a bias for people on which side they may more be on in this. But here, it definitely felt like, hey, here is the information, and I didn't get a single, feeling at all that geohistory may be biased to one side or the other. That I did not get a feeling of any sort of bias, and that is something that's really hard to do, especially on such a modern, such an issue that is having ramifications for our modern world, right? That's happening right now in our day and age. I think that's extremely, yeah, just praising geohistory right here. I hope you guys enjoyed. That was the Israel-Palestine conflict summary on a map by geohistory. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Remember, don't be a fucking anti-Semite in my comments. You will be banned without hesitation. Peace.